Hi, everyone. I'm Rhonda here with Cody. And Cody, I'm just curious, as we talk about these gaps in team structures with the Working Genius, how have you seen that play out, those gaps play out in team meetings?
Yeah, I love talking about Working Genius in meetings for a variety of reasons. But if I were to give some advice to people that are wondering, how do we use this for our meetings? There's a couple things I would say. One is that we all have a natural tendency that is totally well-intentioned to make every meeting match our own Working Genius. So the reason it's important to know that is because we all want to do that. I want to make every meeting match my Working Geniuses, but it's important for the leader to know that because the leader happens to have the formal and moral authority to actually make that meeting stay in that genius. So it's important going in to know, hey, what type of meeting is this? And one of the things that we talk about a lot with Working Genius and meetings is that the reason a lot of meetings are not good is this concept called meeting stew. And when we talk about meeting stew, we talk about the idea that we have a weekly staff meeting that we throw every single topic and tactic into. So we're talking about administrivia and we're covering strategic topics. We're trying to solve big picture planning things all in the same meeting, and we call it meeting stew. We put all the ingredients in a pot and wonder, why is this bad? But when on the discovery of Working Genius, we realized, man, we're having Working Genius stew in a lot of these meetings. And what I mean by that is we might be going into a meeting with the idea that we're going to have a brainstorming meeting. In the language of Working Genius, brainstorming is wonder and invention. We should stay at a relatively high altitude in that meeting. Well, we oftentimes, and we've all experienced this, we'll be in a meeting and we're brainstorming and trying to figure out big picture things. And a well-intentioned team member of ours, probably with the genius of tenacity, might say, well, how are we going to execute this plan? And it's as if we've lost 20,000 feet of altitude in what should have been a brainstorming meeting. And we feel this turbulence of sorts, this sort of meeting stew turbulence. And it takes so much time and energy and emotional energy to pull the room back up to the right elevation. Now, let's not pick on just tenacity people. The same thing can happen where we could be in a meeting where we're getting things done. And this is a enablement tenacity meeting or a galvanizing meeting even, when a well-intentioned team member with W or I might say, is this the right thing? Should we even be talking about this right now? And so we have to be aware, one, that we're all going to try to make every meeting match our own Working Genius. Leaders should be extra aware of that. You might as well double their type on a team because they have the formal ability to stay at that altitude. And the second thing we should be aware is what we're trying to accomplish in any given meeting. Are we here to wonder and invent? Are we here to galvanize the team around this? Are we here to actually have an operational meeting where we're getting things done in the E&T side of things? And if we go into meetings with the right context, it'll allow us to avoid this unnecessary turbulence and frustrate ourselves and each other by constantly bouncing around but not knowing where we're at and what we're trying to accomplish. So those two things, if leaders and teams understood those, we'd dramatically improve the effectiveness of our meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say to the leader just in terms of self-awareness of their own Working Geniuses and also their frustrations, like when they're leading a team meeting of some sort?
Well, that's a great question. I think that there's this idea that while all of our geniuses are necessary to get work done, that all 6 of these we should celebrate, there's a couple things that a leader should know is like, there is also a time to regulate your genius. If we're at a different stage of work, like an inventor genius right before an event where the team is carrying out the details of the event might have a new idea. That's not a great time to have a new idea. Yeah. So the idea that we utilize our geniuses well in the right context, that we can regulate our geniuses when we're further along in the work process, or maybe we're gifted at the tenacity piece and people are at the brainstorming side of things. That level of awareness and that level of ability to regulate is really important. And the second thing is, people will often ask, well, what's the best type for a leader? Well, after we lay out all 6, tell me, do I match the leader profile? The best type for a leader, you should get a pencil out, is a self-aware one.
Yeah.
There is no 2-letter code that this is the right type for a leader. What you need to do is know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, look at your team around you. And if you're a great leader and you're serving your team, what you're doing is knowing what you're not good at and elevating people on your team to fill those gaps for you. So any leader who's self-aware and can elevate and put people in places to fill in their gaps is going to be very successful, and their team is going to thrive.
Yeah, that sounds great. So in other words, I hear you saying delegate a certain type of meeting to the people with the genius.
Yeah.
Would that be?
That's a great, so I think there's this sentiment out there that if I'm a leader, I have to be the one that runs all of these meetings.
Yeah.
Now, leaders are responsible that the meeting is run well, but it doesn't mean that they have to be the person that runs it. In fact, we have had a situation even at our own company where Pat, our leader, is not a galvanizer. There are certain meetings that it's still his responsibility to make sure our meetings that require galvanizing get done, but it's not his responsibility necessarily to be that person and live in a genius outside of his own. So you can own the effectiveness of the meetings without being the point person for every meeting at your organization.
Gosh, that's great stuff. Thank you so much for sharing that today, Cody.
Yeah.